Cleopatra's children and her legacy.
After Cleopatra's death, her three surviving children, Cleopatra Selene II, Alexander Helios, and Ptolemy Philadelphus, were taken to Rome. They were placed under the care of Octavia, the sister of Augustus and the former wife of their father, Mark Antony. During Augustus's victory parade in 29 BC, Cleopatra Selene II and Alexander Helios were displayed as part of the celebration. After this event, history no longer records what happened to Alexander Helios or Ptolemy Philadelphus, and their later lives remain a mystery. Octavia later arranged the marriage of Cleopatra Selene II to Juba II. In 25 BC, Augustus appointed the couple as rulers of Mauritania, a kingdom in North Africa. Together, they rebuilt the city of Iol and renamed it Caesarea. Cleopatra Selene brought scholars, artists, and advisors from Alexandria to her new kingdom, helping spread Greek and Egyptian culture throughout the region. She also named her son Ptolemy to honor her family's Ptolemaic heritage.
Cleopatra Selene II died around 5 BC. After her husband died many years later, their son, Ptolemy of Mauritania, became king. However, in 40 AD, the Roman Emperor Caligula ordered his execution. With his death, the Ptolemaic dynasty that had ruled Egypt for nearly 3 centuries finally came to an end. Although Cleopatra's family lost their kingdom, her memory lived on. Centuries later, some rulers claimed to be descended from her, including Zenobia. Even more than 400 years after Cleopatra's death, people in Egypt were still honoring her. Her remarkable life, intelligence, and dramatic story ensured that she would remain one of history's most famous queens.
How Roman writers described Cleopatra.
Most of what we know about Cleopatra comes from Roman historians, although many of their writings focused more on her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony than on her achievements as a ruler. Many Roman authors were influenced by the political propaganda of Augustus, who wanted to portray Cleopatra as a dangerous foreign queen who had corrupted Antony and threatened Rome. As a result, many ancient accounts present an unfair and negative image of her. The most detailed account of Cleopatra's life was written by the Greek historian Plutarch in the 1st century AD, more than 100 years after her death. Although he never met Cleopatra, Plutarch relied on earlier sources, including people who had known her personally or had lived in the royal court. His work remains one of the most important sources for understanding Cleopatra's life.
Other ancient writers also described Cleopatra from different perspectives. The Roman historian Cassius Dio wrote a detailed history of her reign, while the Jewish historian Josephus recorded information about her relationship with Herod the Great. The Roman statesman Cicero, who met Cleopatra during her visit to Rome, wrote about her in an unfavorable way. Famous Roman poets, including Virgil, Horace, and Ovid, also helped spread the negative image of Cleopatra that became popular throughout the Roman Empire. Not all historical evidence came from Roman writers. Coins, inscriptions, and Egyptian papyrus documents created during Cleopatra's reign provide valuable clues about how she ruled her kingdom. However, far fewer Egyptian records have survived, so historians often have to rely on Roman sources, even though many of them were biased.
For centuries, Cleopatra was often remembered mainly as a beautiful woman who won the hearts of powerful Roman leaders. Modern historians, however, have taken a different view. They point out that she was an intelligent and capable ruler who spoke several languages, managed a large kingdom, and played an important role in international politics. In fact, Cleopatra is known to have had only 2 romantic partners, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Ancient writers such as Plutarch even suggested that her greatest qualities were not her beauty but her intelligence, confidence, and remarkable ability to charm those around her through conversation and wit. Today, many historians see Cleopatra not simply as a legendary seductress, but as one of the most skilled and influential queens of the ancient world.
Cleopatra in ancient art.
Cleopatra was portrayed in many works of art during her lifetime and after her death. Artists in Egypt, Greece, and Rome created statues, busts, reliefs, coins, and carved gemstones showing the famous queen. These artworks reveal how important and well-known she was throughout the ancient world. One of the most remarkable artworks was a large golden bronze statue of Cleopatra placed inside the Temple of Venus Genetrix in Rome. It had been commissioned by Julius Caesar and stood beside a statue of the goddess Venus. This was an extraordinary honor because living people were almost never given statues inside Roman temples. The statue remained there for centuries, even after Cleopatra's death.
Several statues of Cleopatra have survived to the present day. One of the best known is a life-sized marble statue discovered near Rome that is now displayed in the Vatican museums. According to the Greek historian Plutarch, many statues of Mark Antony were destroyed after his defeat, but Cleopatra's statues were spared after one of her loyal friends paid a large sum of money to persuade Augustus not to destroy them. Historians have also debated whether a famous Roman statue, known as the Esquiline Venus, actually represents Cleopatra. Some believe it does because of its hairstyle, royal crown, and the Egyptian cobra carved at its base. Others disagree, arguing that the statue's face does not closely resemble other known portraits of Cleopatra and that it would have been unusual to show her as the Roman goddess Venus. Even so, Cleopatra was often linked with the goddesses Isis and Aphrodite during her lifetime, making the idea possible. Today, these ancient statues, coins, and sculptures continue to help historians learn more about Cleopatra. Although no one knows exactly what she looked like, these surviving artworks provide valuable clues about her appearance, her royal status, and the lasting influence she had across the ancient world.
Cleopatra's coins and portraits.
Coins from Cleopatra's reign survive from every year of her rule, from 51 BC to 30 BC. She was the only Ptolemaic queen to issue coins in her own name. Some historians believe she even inspired Julius Caesar to become the first living Roman to place his own portrait on Roman coins. Cleopatra was also the first foreign queen to appear on Roman currency. Coins made during her relationship with Mark Antony show both of their portraits. Cleopatra and Antony are shown with similar features, including strong noses and prominent chins. This was likely done on purpose to present them as a united royal couple.
Cleopatra's image on her coins looks much stronger and more masculine than the softer, more idealized statues made of her in Greek or Egyptian styles. Her appearance closely resembles that of her father, Ptolemy XII, and possibly earlier members of the Ptolemaic dynasty. This was probably a political choice, helping to present her as a legitimate and powerful ruler. Antony may also have been shown with similar features to connect himself with Cleopatra's royal family and gain greater acceptance in Egypt. The inscriptions on these coins were written in Greek, but they followed Roman coin-making traditions in their layout. This combination reflected both Greek and Roman influences and symbolized the close partnership between Cleopatra and Antony.
Some historians believe Cleopatra deliberately made herself appear more masculine on her coins because Roman society respected strong, authoritative rulers. In fact, she had already adopted this style before meeting Antony, during her exile in Syria. By resembling her father, she strengthened her claim to the Egyptian throne. Many of Cleopatra's coins also show her wearing a royal diadem and the famous melon hairstyle, with her hair divided into sections and tied into a bun. This hairstyle had been worn by earlier Ptolemaic queens such as Arsinoe II and Berenice II. After Cleopatra visited Rome between 46 BC and 44 BC, the hairstyle became fashionable among Roman women. However, after Augustus came to power, it fell out of fashion as simpler and more modest styles became popular.
Cleopatra in ancient paintings.
Several ancient paintings are believed to show Cleopatra, although historians cannot confirm every identification with complete certainty. One of the best-known examples comes from the house of Marcus Fabius Rufus in Pompeii. Painted around the middle of the 1st century BC, it shows the goddess Venus holding Cupid near the entrance of a large temple. Many scholars believe this is actually Cleopatra portrayed as Venus Genetrix, with her son Caesarion shown as Cupid. The painting was probably created around 46 BC, when Julius Caesar dedicated the temple of Venus Genetrix in Rome. At the temple, Caesar placed a large gilded statue of Cleopatra, and many historians think that this statue inspired both the Pompeii painting and later sculptures of the queen.
The woman in the painting wears a royal diadem and closely resembles the famous Vatican statue of Cleopatra. She also wears a transparent veil over the popular melon hairstyle, which was associated with the Ptolemaic queens. Her fair skin, round face, long nose, and large eyes match the way both gods and royal figures were often portrayed in Greek and Roman art. After Octavian ordered Caesarion's execution in 30 BC, the owner of the house appears to have sealed off the room containing the painting. This may have been done because images of Cleopatra's son had become politically dangerous under the new Roman government.
Some historians believe this Pompeii painting is the only surviving contemporary painting of Cleopatra. Another painting from Pompeii, dating to the early 1st century AD, may also show Cleopatra and Caesarion. In this scene, both wear royal crowns while Cleopatra reclines and drinks poison before her death. The painting was once believed to represent the Carthaginian noblewoman Sophonisba, but many scholars now think it is more likely to depict Cleopatra because her suicide was much more famous and several details fit her story better. Interestingly, no snake appears in the painting. This matches the Roman belief that Cleopatra may have used poison rather than dying from the bite of an Egyptian cobra. The background also includes tall double doors that resemble ancient descriptions of Cleopatra's tomb in Alexandria.
Another famous image was discovered in 1818 at Hadrian's villa near Rome. This painting, now lost, showed Cleopatra taking her own life as a snake bit her chest. Early reports described her wearing traditional Egyptian clothing, the robes of the goddess Isis, and the radiant crown worn by Ptolemaic rulers. Some historians believe this painting may even have been copied from the portrait that Octavian displayed during his victory parade after Cleopatra's death. Another Roman painting from Herculaneum, dating to the 1st century AD, may also represent Cleopatra. It shows a woman wearing a royal diadem, pearl hairpins, elegant earrings, and her hair tied into a bun. Her facial features closely resemble Cleopatra's portraits on statues and coins. A similar painting from the House of the Orchard in Pompeii also shows a woman with Egyptian-inspired details, including a Greek-style sphinx. Because of its similarities, scholars think it may have been painted by the same artist and could also represent Cleopatra.
Cleopatra in Egyptian art.
One of the best-known Egyptian-style sculptures of Cleopatra is the bust of Cleopatra in the Royal Ontario Museum. Dating from the mid-1st century BC, it may be the earliest surviving image of Cleopatra shown as both a goddess and the ruling pharaoh of Egypt. Its large, expressive eyes are similar to those seen in Roman copies of Ptolemaic sculptures. At the Temple of Hathor in Dendera, Egypt, carved reliefs on the temple walls show Cleopatra and her son Caesarion making offerings to the gods. Caesarion is shown as an adult pharaoh, emphasizing his role as Egypt's future ruler. After Cleopatra's death, Emperor Augustus had his own name carved onto the temple, symbolizing Rome's control over Egypt.
Another famous statue, made of black basalt and now displayed in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, was long believed to represent Arsinoe II, an earlier Ptolemaic queen. However, recent research suggests it may actually depict Cleopatra. This statue wears 3 royal cobras, uraei, on its crown instead of the usual 2, a symbol more closely linked to Cleopatra. It also holds a double cornucopia, another symbol that appears on Cleopatra's coins. Some historians point out that Egyptian statues of Cleopatra were highly idealized and do not accurately show what she looked like. They were meant to present her as the perfect Egyptian ruler rather than as a realistic portrait. Although Cleopatra adopted traditional Egyptian dress for important religious ceremonies, she most likely spent most of her time dressed as a Greek monarch, reflecting her Macedonian Greek heritage.
Family background and ancestry.
Cleopatra belonged to the Ptolemaic dynasty, a family of Macedonian Greeks who ruled Egypt after the death of Alexander the Great. Her ancestors came from northern Greece, and through her father, Ptolemy XII, she was descended from 2 of Alexander's most important generals, Ptolemy I Soter, who founded the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, and Seleucus I Nicator, who founded the Seleucid Empire in West Asia. While Cleopatra's father's family is well known, the identity of her mother is less certain. Most historians believe she was the daughter of Cleopatra V Tryphonina, the wife and sister of Ptolemy XII, who was also the mother of Cleopatra's older sister, Berenice IV. However, because historical records are incomplete, this cannot be confirmed with certainty.
Most members of the Ptolemaic dynasty married within their own family to preserve their Greek royal bloodline. Unlike earlier Egyptian rulers, they generally did not marry native Egyptians. As a result, many historians believe Cleopatra had little or no Egyptian ancestry. She would most likely have considered herself Greek, even though she ruled Egypt. Some scholars note that Cleopatra may have had a small amount of Persian ancestry. This came through Cleopatra I Syra, an earlier Ptolemaic queen whose family included Persian and Iranian ancestors. However, her ancestry remained mostly Macedonian Greek. A few historians have suggested that Cleopatra's mother may have been partly Egyptian, possibly from a family of priests in Memphis. This theory has never gained wide acceptance, and there is no strong evidence to support it.
Interestingly, the Romans never claimed that Cleopatra was illegitimate or of Egyptian birth during their propaganda against her. The ancient historian Strabo was the only writer to suggest that Cleopatra and some of her siblings were born outside of a lawful marriage, but most historians do not accept this claim. The Ptolemaic family was also known for marrying close relatives. Because of these repeated family marriages, Cleopatra's family tree is highly interconnected. Even the identity of her mother remains debated, as some ancient sources refer to her as Cleopatra V, while others call her Cleopatra VI. Some historians even believe these may have been two names for the same woman. As a result, parts of Cleopatra's family history are still uncertain today.
The queen who defied an empire.
Cleopatra VII was far more than the legendary beauty often portrayed in stories, paintings, and films. She was an intelligent, highly educated, and determined ruler who inherited a kingdom in crisis and fought throughout her life to protect Egypt's independence during one of the most turbulent periods in ancient history. Unlike many of her predecessors, Cleopatra embraced both her Greek heritage and the Egyptian culture she ruled. She became the first Ptolemaic monarch known to learn the Egyptian language, spoke several other languages, and actively took part in government, diplomacy, religion, and the economy. She was not simply a queen who relied on powerful Roman men, but a skilled politician who used every resource available to defend her kingdom.
Her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony shaped the course of history. Through these alliances, she strengthened Egypt's position, expanded its territory, and secured her family's rule for a time. However, after Antony's defeat by Octavian at the Battle of Actium, Cleopatra's dream of preserving an independent Egypt came to an end. Rather than live as a prisoner and be displayed in a Roman triumph, Cleopatra chose to die on her own terms in 30 BC. With her death, the Ptolemaic kingdom, which had ruled Egypt for nearly 300 years, came to an end. Egypt became a Roman province, and Octavian, later known as Augustus, became the first emperor of Rome, marking the beginning of the Roman Empire.
Cleopatra's image has survived in statues, coins, temple reliefs, paintings, literature, operas, plays, and films. More than 2,000 years after her death, she remains a symbol of power, intelligence, ambition, and resilience. Her story continues to fascinate people around the world because it is not only the story of Egypt's last queen, but also the story of a woman who stood against the greatest empire of her time and whose legacy has endured through the centuries.